Can you even picture Paris without it? I mean, really. The Eiffel Tower is more than just a landmark. It's the symbol of France. But the story of how it was born? Well, that's a wild, almost forgotten tale about a crazy bet that was fought tooth and nail every single step of the way. So let's dive into the story of the tower that was never supposed to be permanent. Today, it's just a given, right? It's as French as a baguette. It's been on a billion postcards and in countless movies. You know, it feels like it's always been there, like it grew out of the ground. But nope, not even close.
In fact, when the idea first came out, the who's who of Paris's art and literary scene absolutely hated it. I mean, they despised it. They called it this monstrous, useless, ridiculous factory chimney that was going to scar their beautiful city forever. And this wasn't just a few grumpy artists. This was an all-out cultural war.
So, that's the big question here. How on earth did this ugly metal skeleton, the vision of one man, Gustave Eiffel, manage to survive all that hate, a massive political scandal, and even a scheduled demolition date to become, well, the Eiffel Tower? Okay, so our story kicks off with a challenge. Paris is getting ready to host the 1889 World's Fair, a huge deal meant to celebrate the 100th anniversary of the French Revolution. They needed a showstopper, something totally spectacular to prove to the world that France was the king of industry and science. And here's the funny thing. The initial idea wasn't even Eiffel's. In 1884, two of his engineers sketched this, basic iron pylon. They showed it to the boss, and his reaction was pretty blunt. Nope, not interested. It was just a boring piece of engineering. But then an architect named Stephen Sylvester got his hands on it. He's the one who added those beautiful, elegant arches at the bottom and designed visitor floors with restaurants and observation decks. He turned a pylon into a destination. And that's when the light bulb went on for Eiffel. He suddenly saw it. This could be his masterpiece for the World's Fair. But getting it built wasn't going to be easy. It meant fighting a war on two fronts. First, Eiffel had a powerful rival with a totally different vision he had to beat. And second, he had to convince a city that was basically already sharpening its pitchforks to stop him. Eiffel's main competition was this guy, Jules Bordet, the architectural superstar of the era. Bordet proposed a 300-meter tower too, but made of classic, monumental stone. He called it the Sun Column, and he even planned to put hospital rooms in it for patients who needed fresh air. I mean, you have to understand, iron was for factories and train sheds, not grand monuments. Bordet was the safe bet, the establishment favorite. Eiffel's iron dream? That was the crazy, radical long shot. So how'd the long shot win? Well, this is where things get interesting. Eiffel wasn't just a genius engineer, he was a very smart political player. He used his connections with the Minister of Commerce, and when the official competition rules were finally published, they were, let's say, suspiciously specific. They called for get this, a 300-meter-high iron tower with a square base of 125 meters. Well, what do you know? Those just happened to be the exact specs of Eiffel's project. The whole contest was basically a sham. It was rigged from the very beginning. So with the contract in his pocket, Eiffel now faced the truly colossal task of actually building this thing, and he had to pull it off in just over 2 years. No pressure. The very first problem was the ground itself. The site was basically a muddy swamp right next to the river. So to lay stable foundations, Eiffel used this incredible technique he perfected building bridges. He sunk these huge waterproof metal boxes, they're called caissons, deep into the mud. Then they pumped compressed air into them, which pushed all the water out. This let his guys dig the foundations in a totally dry space, way below the riverbed. It was absolutely brilliant. Now this number, 18,000, it tells you something really revolutionary. The tower wasn't built on site like a normal building. It was basically a massive prefabricated kit, like the world's biggest, most complicated piece of IKEA furniture. 18,000 individual iron parts, all designed and manufactured with insane precision in Eiffel's workshop miles away. And all those pieces were then brought to the site and put together using 2.5 million rivets. Every single one was heated red hot, then hammered into place by a 4-man team. Can you imagine? Just an incredible feat of organization and pure muscle. But all of this work led to the single most nail-biting make-or-break moment of the entire project. After a year of building, the 4 enormous legs were curving up and inward, about to join together. If their math was off by even a millimeter, the whole tower would be unstable. It would be a complete disaster. But of course, Eiffel had a plan for this. The man thought of everything. Hidden inside each of those 70-ton legs were powerful hydraulic jacks. He also put giant sandboxes under them,
which they could slowly empty to make these tiny, precise adjustments. With these two systems, his team could literally nudge these massive pillars until they were in perfect alignment. And on the big day, they met flawlessly. The tower was safe. The tower was a triumph, a masterpiece of engineering. But just as Eiffel was reaching the absolute peak of his career, a huge financial scandal exploded that threatened to destroy everything: his reputation, his money, and the future of his tower.
They called it the Panama Scandal. Basically, a French company trying to build the Panama Canal went totally bankrupt after bribing a bunch of politicians and journalists. It wiped out the life savings of thousands of regular French families. And Eiffel? He was right in the middle of it, because he had taken a very, very profitable contract to build the canal's massive locks.
He was charged with fraud. His enemies saw their chance and piled on, even digging up his family's distant German roots and using his original name, Bonnickhausen, to smear him. He was actually convicted, and even though the verdict was later overturned on a technicality, it didn't matter. The damage was done. His name was mud.
And the fallout for his tower was immediate and just devastating. The public turned on him, and they turned on his creation. After getting 2 million visitors during the World's Fair, the numbers just cratered. By 1893, the year he was convicted, visitors had dropped by almost 90%. The tower was suddenly an outcast, just like its creator.
So Eiffel was disgraced, and his tower was a failure. And to make matters even worse, it literally had a death sentence hanging over its head. To save his life's work, he had to prove it was more than just a tourist trap. He had to make it indispensable.
You have to remember, the tower was never meant to be permanent. From day one, Eiffel's contract said he could operate it for just 20 years. After that, it was scheduled to be torn down, dismantled, gone. And with the scandal fresh in everyone's minds, a lot of people were counting down the days.
Salvation came from the most unlikely place. An army captain named Gustave Eiffel was tinkering with his brand new experimental technology, wireless telegraphy, what we would call radio. He looked at the tower and realized it was the biggest, most perfect antenna in the world. Now, the army bigwigs, they were skeptical. They were still using carrier pigeons. But Eiffel, a true man of science, he got it immediately. He personally paid for the experiments himself, and it worked. The tower became a critical military asset, able to send and receive messages over huge distances. Its scientific usefulness had just made it too valuable to tear down.
And just like that, it was saved. For more than 40 years, it stood as the tallest man-made structure on Earth, a record it held until the Empire State Building came along in 1931. You could say it was the original skyscraper, the building that kicked off our whole modern obsession with reaching for the clouds.
So the next time you see a picture of the Eiffel Tower, remember the unbelievable story behind it. This impossible bet that was hated, sabotaged, disgraced, and almost torn down for scrap metal. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What would Paris and our world look like today if that temporary tower had actually been demolished?